Hello everyone, I'm Paul Gheorghiu. I'm the co-founder at Footprintrs AI. And I would like to invite also the rest of the members of today's first panel on stage. I have the great privilege of moderating the first panel of the day. And we're gonna discuss about retail media networks that scaled. Colin did a great job at telling us a lot of things about this. I don't know if you have any more topics to go through now, but we'll see. For sure, we'll drop the buzzwords and we'll focus. Colin laid out a lot of things, a lot of information. We'll focus on processing this information and bringing in real actionable insights for you guys. So again, it's a privilege to have such a distinguished panel. I will invite you guys to all briefly introduce yourselves, and then we'll kick things through. So, Gaëtan, please.
Hi, thank you very much, Paul. So I'm Gaëtan Pacton. French citizen, working the last 25 years in Romania, only in food retail. And now I'm, let's say, in a kind of yearly holidays after finalization of the transaction between Mid-Europa and Ahold Delhaize Group regarding the sales of Profi in Romania. So I'm a kind of retired CEO and very much excited by this retail media adventure, which was starting very much during my mandate as a CEO.
Hello everybody, my name is Hannah. I'm working at OB First Media Group in Germany, Cologne. And I've been in this industry for almost 8 years now. Before that, I've been at television and do marketing and media over there, and therefore I was at a media agency. So within all of that, I skipped school early. So yeah, right now I'm 34 and very happy to be here, talk about retail media in Poland, but also internationally. We at OB have a lot to talk about when it comes to retail media in all the different OB countries, especially we are also in Poland and want to bring up some new stuff to Poland in the upcoming months. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you again for the invitation, and let's have a good talk here.
I'm Raimund. I entrepreneur, built 3 retail tech startups in the past 15 years. So before it was called retail media, actually. So there wasn't a word for it. We just called it Google Ads for retail back then. So after that, I did a lot of investing in different retail tech startups, computer vision startups. What I'm doing now is what some call a roll-up. I'm buying different retail media startups, established retail media companies. We just bought Germany's largest couponing company. And our basic idea, or my basic bet right now, is in-store. We would like to infuse in-store with sensors, with computer vision, with AI, in order to really solve that last mile in the advertising funnel for the advertiser, but also for the retailer for the better. So yeah, I've just started this in April, but we had already about 200 people from Berlin. Next stop is US, expanding in more European countries, probably in 2026.
I'm Colin.
Colin needs no introduction. So Colin was telling us that retailers are sitting on a mountain of data. They need to figure out what to use in terms of priority out of this data, how to convert it in something, maybe audiences, that are highly relevant for brands, because ultimately brands are the ones that need to be satisfied with retail media. And then we also need to go through which are the channels that are most relevant for getting retail media to the end customer and delivering maximum results. So I'd like to start maybe from a very strategic view and then drill down in the details. And I'd like to start with you, Hannah. So what does retail media represent today for retailers, and what should it represent, and what's the gap here?
Well, right now, I think that retail media represents, in general, for retailer itself, a new opportunity to just grow on a new revenue stream, basically. But besides that and beyond that, to be honest, I think it is a triple win situation for retailer to cooperate with suppliers or other brands, non-endemic brands, for example, to satisfy your own B2C customer even more with relevant information and ads that matter to the specific use case your B2C target group, for example, has. So I don't see a huge gap, to be honest, but maybe the others have other opinion.
I'll tell you a little bit of a gap. Two types of retailers I see in the world are interesting. There's one who see it, what I call it, from a strategic perspective, and there's those who see it from a tactical perspective. So the tactical one see it as, when can I get the money in now? Done a project on an in-store screen for a big business in the UK recently. The only thing that mattered, when is the cash coming? It's okay. Can you hear me? Yes. But more strategically, people like Tesco, people like Coles in Australia, even the big ones like Walmart, you can hear when they're talking about it, they see it as this long-term play that can deliver results for both sides. Whereas the tactical folks like cash now, who cares about the future? That's what I think is the gap.
So from my point of view, the gap right now sits mainly in how much data are we able to use. So we have an ideal state, which we'll reach maybe in 1 year, maybe in 10, maybe in 100, when we'll know exactly everything that the person is doing in its interaction with a retailer, be it in the physical environment, be it in the online environment. We'll fuse the two together, and we'll understand second by second basis what these persons are doing. And again, by running a lot of retail media campaigns, we'll understand how to influence these persons at exactly the right moment. And this will, in my opinion, for sure, increase, we like to call it ARPU, so the average revenue per shopper. Basically, that's generated out of retail media. Another general question, because I think it's important just to frame things, and this is for Colin, you know, because of your marketing background. So where does retail media fit in the greater media ecosystem of the world? Where does it currently fit? I'm sure we'll talk more about this in the next panel, but I think it's also important for a discussion now.
The perception is that retail media, because it comes from an online regional perspective, over the years, people saw what Amazon Advertising was doing, they saw what Walmart Connect was doing, that it's a conversion mechanism due to the popularity of sponsored ads, which I mentioned at the start. So it's seen as a conversion mechanism. But that's kind of a bit old school. The new technologies and the new screens mean that it can do everything else as well. It can do awareness and it can do consideration. However, I would say within the overall marketing framework of how marketers see the world, that has not permeated how marketing teams think. Because marketing teams think in terms of reach, think in terms of TV to deliver reach, I think in terms of outdoor to deliver reach, and the marketing teams don't care much about conversion. And we have this other teams, trade, shopper, digital, who do care about conversion. So it's a little bit of a divide at the moment, and I see it in many of the workshops I run where I'm trying to explain it, and you can see the marketing folks are like, yeah, this is just brands, don't care about this because this is not brand stuff. Yeah, I'm sure this sounds like something you've seen, Hannah.
Yeah, and I have that kind of talk with a lot of people who do media.
Not just me.
And when it comes to that point, I can just recommend to talk about targeting solutions then. Because when you talk to people who do media and want to have awareness and reach and don't really care about the conversion at the end, retail media is a perfect opportunity and solution to do new targeting based on data. but also based on a journey, even when you don't have first-party data. Nobody has an environment as close to the decision of the customer at the point of sale as you have as a retailer. So this is a relevant journey for targeting, and that's what I think why media people should also think in retail media and about it.
I think to maybe add to this and to your previous point, if retail media works, I'm just giving you that perspective, if retail media really works in terms of selling more, and that's basically the only reason why we want to do advertising, selling more now and in the future, it should work for the retailer as well. And Colin and I agree with your assessment. There are two types of retailers. And I think there's one type, basically says advertisers are stupid. They're paying for websites per impression. And for those of you who don't know, an impression is basically the ad being rendered on the website. So it's not even seen. And the level of stupidity comes basically from the fact that I used to run Germany's largest detergent brand, Persil, and I was flying blind in terms of like, why is my customer buying anything? So I couldn't see in the store what was going on. That was the reason why I was investing in TV and other channels. So the thing is, there's one type of retailer that thinks, okay, let's just scam those stupid advertisers a bit more, and they'll probably buy our ads because they are buying impressions on websites which no one is seeing because they're using ad blockers and they're still paying for it. So let's just put up screens in stores and maybe it will work. Turns out those retailers don't use their retail media networks to follow up on their goals, that is increase basket size, increase revenue, increase margin, positioning. They don't use that. So they exclusively use those scams for advertisers. And then there's some new retailers that really understood you got to combine this. First of all, point of decision making in store, maybe on site, although I think that's a bit less important as of now. But in store, combine this with data, to your point, and then you can really drive impact. But then they're using this for themselves as well in order to pursue their goals. This is real the schism between two kinds of retailers. And the first might work the short term, but it's a scam. I mean, let's be honest, it's a scam. And the second one is really where I think we should go to.
Great conclusions. Gaëtan, now building upon what Colin was also saying earlier in his presentation, going back to maybe the retailer side. The responsibility right now in terms of retail media inside the retailer is quite fuzzy. So it's not clear. Do you have the marketing department in charge of this? Do you have people from digital in charge of this? Do you have commercial department in charge of this? Who should deal with this? You know, so what needs to happen inside the retailer in order to transform this retailer in, as we're saying, a true media mogul of the future?
Well, from my point of view, or at least based on my experience, it has to be completely independent structure, and I will just advise to do it. And depends very much on the personality of the leader. When I'm the person who is leading the retail media. So in our case, it was very much led by digital, and I really believe it has to be managed by someone who is not from commercial and not from marketing, because I will say on what I was listening, it's clear that is a certain way, old-fashioned way to manage retail, and is a new way of managing retail, which is, let's say, growing the last 10 years. And I don't believe that the new era of retail, which I embrace very much, will let retail media managed by commercial or managed by marketing, because it will be old way of thinking, and not shaking and embarrassing the revolution, which is now, let's say, I don't want to say dictated, but almost dictated by data and by such, let's say, dynamic and new way of revenue. For sure, retail media has to be part of the strategy of a retailer and not just as a word, as a fact. And as a fact, it has to, let's say, be, let's say, underline as much as it's possible in front of the entire company, saying, okay, this is new era, this is new beginning. We know that it will bring fantastic revenue in the next years. We are not able to quantify it yet, but let's work and build on it in order to maximize, because the customers will be very much satisfied, and we will go and we will be closer to the customers, which is one of the obligation we have as a retailer if we want to do our job.
Gaëtan, I have a question for you, because Profi did a very interesting job, but what would be, I'm always fascinated in the retailer, was there any pushback internally, because you had to grow it from scratch? Was there a pushback? Was there people within the business going, no, this is a terrible idea? What was the...
Not at all. In the case of Profi was a company, and is still a company, which is very open-minded to not only technology, but let's say each kind of project which may improve the service to clients. So mainly, when we started this project, it was really very important. One of our manager, and we're giving full freedom to do it. And let's say from something that we said, we have absolutely nothing to use. Even it's very, very strong, because we were starting to work with data, but not so powerful and not with so, let's say, strong accuracy as, let's say, we were discovering and building this partnership with Paul and with Dan. So let's say it started maybe as a curiosity, but we understood very fast that it's mandatory to go here. And we are speaking about, let's say, very much, and this is one of the exchange I had some time ago with Paul and Dan, and say, okay, we are discussing about the importance of it for the brand, but there is a major, major impact on supply, because to satisfy the clients, brands will have to also deliver, I don't want to say better quality, but the supply will have a strong impact on it. And just, let's say, I will say playing, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong using this word playing, but let's say strongly working, or working on a very different way and more dynamic way with those data, will give to retailer and to producer and to brands a strong advantage to anticipate even more than we can do it right now. So and all those things are going to, let's say, as a main advantage to the final customers. And this is all our duties, neither from supplier side, producer side, retailer side.
So in this sense, just anticipating and talking about the future, maybe the near future or the distant future, do you, Hannah, see a merger between marketing and commercial, potentially, brought in by retail media, and what data within retailers can actually do?
So you mean a problem between those
No, I mean
areas?
a merger, because currently,
Yeah.
of course, there are some problems.
Yeah.
But probably these, in some organizations, these problems are solved by, as Gaëtan was saying, building a completely new structure
Yeah.
outside these two departments.
Yeah.
In other organizations, it's solved by bringing them under one leadership. So I'm thinking that maybe, in the longer term, do you think that these two functions will be able to merge? And maybe, as Gaëtan was saying, then also merge with supply chain,
Well, yeah, we've made the experience at OB because we started being in the digital part of OB, creating retail media and the whole unit, and now we are our own company within OB, at the OB First Media Group, and do have a own legal entity as well. And I think that it can go both ways, to be honest, but you need to have an alignment and a commitment to pull the rug the same way. You know, so, and I think that marketing or more brand efficient and responsible people need to understand that retail media also brings value to their kind of job when a retailer does that retail media case. But also I think that when you have the power of media and retail media under one, for example, leader or leadership team, then you have a kind of a speedboat to bring those two buckets closer together. But this can also be when you have a real strong commitment and good partnership within your company and the same belief in the power of media and retail media, doing more for your brand, for your company at all, and of course for the B2C customer.
Okay, thank you. Raimund, now you've seen a lot of retail media networks. You've seen a lot of examples of retail media working or not working in certain organizations. If you were to, let's say, start from scratch, you were to be hired by a retailer doing 25 billion in sales, saying, look, I need to start my retail media initiative from scratch, what would you do? What would you start with?
I did this 4 or 5 years ago with Schwarz Group, where I launched their retail media network. And I think my lessons learned there were you really need a partnership between procurement, supply, and the business. So I can say this now because contractually it's fine. After several years, basically procurement shut down 80% of our campaigns in the first 2 years because there's an inherent conflict between the brands and procurement, and it's very hard to resolve that conflict in larger organizations, especially in stronger retailers. It's easier to do so in small and mid-sized retailers, and there can be a win-win situation. In the strongest retailers, and especially those coming from Germany, it's a very hierarchical organization, and there can only, in their mindset, can only be one winner, and it's either procurement or it's media. So I would make sure to solve that very early on. And the second thing I would do is I would not entirely bet on endemic advertisers, because I think there's a good chance that you will never solve that problem in your organization. So right now, we were discussing this before, like my personal bet is, like in the business cases I have, it's 50% endemic and 50% non-endemic. When I'm talking about non-endemic, it's really sometimes regional and local advertising that we're going after, which create even less friction between the retailers and procurement departments and retail media departments. So yeah, that'd be, aside from the tech, and we can talk about the tech later, that would be the number one.
Paul?
Yeah, that was my question. Colin, have you ever seen this issue solved anywhere?
In fact, I'm going to take Raymond's point there. I don't think it will be solved in the case of it's black and white now. Everybody knows exactly what to do, and we're all happy families. I'll tell you some things I've seen to kind of some to avoid and some things to do to take heart of. So we talked about retailers are retailers at heart, but within retail organizations, procurement can be quite powerful, legal can be quite powerful, and obviously legal, particularly in Europe and the UK, can be very powerful in the organization. So one particular client I have out of the UK worked with a very famous brand who I might have mentioned earlier, and the very famous brand who I might have mentioned earlier basically gave money to the retailer to set up a data clean room, which we will touch on this afternoon. I think that's still lying in cyberspace now, 4 years later, with the money still gone and sitting in the retailer's pocket. Because the legal guys were like, well, not guys, but the legal folks were like, data clean room? Don't like it. Don't like the sound of that. what? Moving, no, bang. Yeah. And so you've got a lack of understanding, and it's a fair point. Why should legal people understand data clean rooms? Yeah. So you've got a bit of a technical challenge there. So watch out for that. That's just a standard. The legal folks are protecting things, and procurement, they're protecting the business. So no problem with that. However, there's another hidden point that we should really talk about. And given that Raimund was pretty upfront, I'm going to be pretty upfront as well. Okay, although I'm not German, so I'm Irish. So
Let's set a good example.
So I'm going to be upfront as well. There's two things in all organizations, and they're not a judgment, they're just in all organizations. There's a set of incentives in place and a status in place. Yeah, and that's cool. Yeah, there's no problem with that. All organizations, whether they're 2 people or 200,000 people, have a set of incentives in place and a set of status roles in place. And in many organizations, the buying of the procurement team may have more power, more incentives, and more status in the organization. And trying to break that will be pretty much impossible. That's why it takes great leadership like Gaëtan had in Profi to kind of navigate that through the organization. So just watch out for that, because if you're setting up a retail media network, you have to be mindful of that particular issue and see who has got the incentive to help you or not to help you. Now, I'll give you an example then from Australia that has worked very well. In fact, it's worked incredibly well because of news that happened in the last few weeks. So this particular organization is the second largest grocer in Australia. They're called Coles. And if you've ever been to Australia, you'll see them on every street corner. They're a huge organization. And they set up a retail media network business called Coles 360 about 4 years ago. And what they did was they had all worked in the competitors' retail media network a few years earlier, who are called Woolworths. And Woolworths' retail media network is called Cartology. Are you staying with me here? And Cartology was set up over here, way off, separate to the business. And so when Cartology tried to meet the suppliers, the business said, get lost. You're some other random people over here, go away. And so they limited their potential. However, what Coles 360 did was, we are going to go into the meetings with the trade folks. We're going to go into the meetings with the category folks. And so imagine it's myself and Raimund, we're going into the meetings together with the suppliers. And what happened was the category folks, let's say I'm the category person who just knows about to do buying and selling and that's it, and Raimund's the expert in digital. So what happened was the conversation would happen and Raimund would then start talking about, here's all the things we have in our retail media offering, and here's what it can do. And instead of rejecting, they were like, wow, you know more about what you're talking about than I do. And we're capturing more share of a budget from the brand. And my incentive is to do so because they align the incentives between Raimund and Colin. Whereas many organizations, my incentive is to go, who the hell are you, get out of here. Yeah. So incentives matter, and what you want to do is set up the incentives for the overall base working with suppliers to be aligned like that. That set of organizations that worked with them on this has then been acquired now. All 70 staff have been acquired for about 400 million. So it works. It definitely works.
So this is a great takeaway. The fact that the commercial departments should work together with the retail media departments, especially during supplier negotiations, in order to make sure that retail media is integrated in the greater mix that the retailer basically offers to the brand at the end of the day. My question is, again, very practical. So ideally, we would live in a world where all these activities would be harmonized, and the brands would only pay, as Dan likes to say it, they would only pay one type of fee that would contain retail media, it would contain shopper marketing, it would contain trade marketing, it would contain placements on the shelves, it would contain everything. And then you would just move the needle in a very dynamic way with a platform such as Footprints, through a demand and supply competitive bidding system, let's say, through with the brands. But this is an ideal world. Now, coming back to our real world and to people here in the room, what else can be done in a very pragmatic way, apart from these joint negotiations, to actually move the needle in terms of retail media? So, Anna or Gaëtan, maybe practical examples from your side.
Well, I think besides all of that collaboration within your own company, it's always relevant to take a look on your inventory and your infrastructure. So besides all of that, it is important to focus on that too, because it's very important for you that you got the inventory at the point of sale that you have. So if it's only digital, you need maybe an ad server, you need slots that you can put ads on besides the homepage with one teaser, right? So that you can go the full funnel of the customer journey within your eShop, for example. That's what I would say.
From my view, Paul, at the end of the day, we are discussing about revenue. And the scope neither of commercial or digital is to increase this level of revenue. And this is a point I will start and argue with the team. So commercial, you are able to bring a such level of revenue, which we have practiced, we know how to approach, we have history. Excellent. It's working until a certain level. What is new is coming. We need, first of all, to learn. We need to discover. We need to learn. We need to start to properly work on it. And let's say at the level of implementation, you will have, or I used to have on my position to have targets for each of the people from commercial, people from marketing, people from, let's say, retail media. And with the time being, yes, most probably when it will be already on the way to maturity, we may have this ideal world. But until there is a certain journey, and during this journey, it's very important to have, let's say, those, let's say, target and let's freedom to people, establish some limits, some border that commercial cannot, let's say, try to take it from retail media, and also, let's say, teach each of those people and work on the complementarity and what as a company to win, because again, it's at the end of the day revenue which is going to the P&L of the company and which is here to improve the P&L of the company, and it's kind of revenue which was not so, let's say, maybe so important or so strategic or easy to touch for retailers some years ago.
So this is a great point, Gaëtan, and you've read my mind, because my next question was about revenue, actually. It was, how do we ensure that retail media actually generates net new revenue? And how do you ensure the fact that we're not just moving money from one pocket to another, from the trade marketing budget pocket to the retail media budget pocket?
I think that besides many of the facts that you already said, it's also important to maybe have a separate legal entity so that you can act within as a retail media company as a publisher or media house. So this is one thing that separates the old logic from the new logic when you have your own legal entity.
What I discover, and here I would like to come back on what Raimund was saying, and it was quite, let's say for me, very, very important, is also this part of endemic and non-endemic. And as a retailer, the non-endemic on, let's say, shop floor is also very important because you are offering something else to clients. And another, let's say, chapter is when we were, let's say, pushing and we started being retail media brand, exchanging with you, establishing the direction and the tactic strategy for, let's say, the years. we also discover that, okay, it's nice to see big brands like Procter, Unilever, Ferrero, whoever they are. But we discover also the importance of the regional suppliers. And those regional suppliers, they maybe not have so much money to spend. But when you are, at least in our case, being in almost 1,000 localities in Romania, being, let's say, having the largest coverage of the country, and you are almost in every village or big cities, the regional suppliers, or even the very small one that you may help, you retailer in your strategy, is very important because you are communicating also much more feelings and part also of certain education, which I believe it's also something which makes a lot of sense in this approach of communicating in a very different way and underlining what is good, important, and healthy for the client.
I'm a huge fan of thinking of retail media as an opportunity for both NPD, but also local owner-operated, fast-growing brands. Particularly, there's examples in the UK where Superdrug, who are a client of ours, have female-owned brands, and they're giving them opportunity within the store to sell product and meet the person who actually runs the business. So my very first point on retail media 5 years ago was the opportunity for innovation, new products, new faces, new things is as big as it is for existing brands. And that is net new revenue because the consumer is happy because they're getting new stuff. You're happy because you're getting new retail media revenue. And obviously the supplier is happy because they're getting distribution and they're, if you will, the ads themselves will sort of chase the revenue, if you will. That's a very strong belief of mine.
I agree. And I think the other point is data. Well, like you guys, obviously, because you're very strong into that. But now that I'm acquiring businesses, I'm looking at the business model in that space. If you look at businesses that just put up screens in stores, usually they will sell the inventory for CPM values between like 5 and 8, 10, 12 euros. Now, we just acquired a couponing company, and what one of their products is, it's stupid, and most of you know it. It's basically the old Catalina business model. I think you would know it. It's print on a receipt. Now, it's like the worst advertising you could make because it's black and white and exactly at the wrong point of the shopper journey. So you wouldn't want to do this. But what they have is all the transactional data. So, and they're selling this for CPM of 60 to 80 euros if you convert this into CPM values. And it just tells me you can sell the worst ad with data, precise targeting at a much higher value than a nice glossy shiny screen at the entrance of the store where the average person looks at 1.7 seconds and you know nothing about the shopper yet.
This is a great point again, and I think it's a great takeaway that we're also seeing across the retailers we're working with. So the more data heavy advertising is, and the more accurate the audiences are, of course, the higher the CPM and the higher the margins for the retailer. So this is indeed a great point.
I think we should all just basically stop the conference and run out the door and get a till receipt business. Is that?
I thought it was finished when you finished your presentations.
I think if you look at Catalina and how they're doing in the US, I don't think it's a good idea. But it still tells you that there's a lot in the data in terms of value to advertisers.
So I'd like to just see if there are any questions from the audience.
I have a question.
Please.
I think the question is about profit sharing. This is the main question. Because if you look at the history and you look at the effective consumer response in the late 90s, it was also a gold grand like now retail. Everybody was happy. The CEO was happy making meetings and presentation and everything. This is the breakthrough, which was not. Yeah. And the first project between Walmart and P&G went wrong because they produced profit they couldn't share it. And I think this is the main question also here.
It's true. If you look, ECR is actually one of the things we should reconsider because it's gone terrible wrong. I mean, there's some things we learned from this, but ECR was definitely meant to be good. Now, I think it's about profit sharing. But to my earlier point, if you enable if you really install a retail media network that drives impact, it should be able to augment basket size. It should be able to do drive to store. It should be able to reposition the retailer as maybe a local retailer with great produce and whatnot. So it should be able to do all those things for the retailer. So in theory, it should be incentive aligned. But the truth is, to your point, most of the retail media networks we see right now are basically the CPM scams I was talking about earlier. And this is not the way to do it. And then you need profit sharing.
Exactly. I mean, this is the step to get the successes first. And secondly, mostly the retail media is done by the big brands. If you are a private label driven company and you want to grow your private label, you are in a competitive situation to the big brands, which are going to the general audience, not to your customers.
It's, if I may answer that. So yeah, absolutely true. And I was at the same situation at Lidl, where obviously our main objective is to drive private label brands. But back to the point, if you have a system that enables actual conversions at the POS, it should be able to do that also for your private label. And in the end, it's a bidding mechanism, but it should be a real-time bidding mechanism where I say, I can see that customer in front of the shelf. I have sensors installed, see that customer in front of the shelf. I know they just put Ariel, that was my competitive brand, in the basket. How much are you willing to bid for that customer?
Big openness, which is not the case in the case of Lidl.
It's, well, and then as Lidl, we would have said, all right, we might bid a little bit more because we know they're buying detergent worth 50 euros a year. So customer lifetime value is probably around 250. So. But it's a long way. You're spot on. Yeah, that's exactly.
A long way, but I think shorter than in the 90s, because what else changed since the 90s is also AI. So I think AI will enable a lot of the things that couldn't be done up until now to also solve these sorts of problems. So AI can also solve problems for private labels with very accurate targeting, again, once you understand who you want to target and at what moment and on what channel. Do we have any other questions? If not, we still have 2 minutes, and I'd like to go back to that non-endemic question, because we talked a lot about endemic brands, so brands that are present on the shelves of the retailer, but we haven't talked about the non-endemic brands. The brands that are not present on the shelf of the retailer, but would like to target the people that are shopping with a certain retailer. What does it take for a retailer to actually attract non-endemic brands? Anna?
Well, yeah, of course, it depends on the use case fit between your both target groups. So, for example, at OB, you do everything around your home. And sometimes there are things that happen in a very emotional context. For example, when you get your first child, or when you first bought your first own home, etc. And then there's so much that is within that kind of use case: insurance, furniture for the baby, etc. pp. And if you can prove that you have these kind of audiences that match in interest to the audience of the non-endemic brand, then you create a perfect match. Because what is also important for every retailer, I think that you think that too, is that you be a brand safe place first, and then you also guarantee to your own customer that what they see in your ecosystem is relevant for them. And that is somehow how to balance which non-endemic use case fit you have or no. And when you don't have the fit, I can just recommend to then not try to find it between the lines, because you will lose the interest of the audience in your own B2C customer group.
Fit might sometimes be a bit, I agree, the fit might be a bit broader than one might expect at first. So one of the best-selling products of a company that I just bought is actually we advertise at Checkout TV and in-cart basket screens, job ads, while people are pushing their carts from the cashier to their cars. And the logic here is they just spend a lot of money in that store, so they're thinking about their bank accounts. So there's job ads, and that actually converts quite well. So that is an example I did not think about 1 year ago, but it works.
Yeah, very, very practical. So I think we had a very interesting discussion with lots of nice takeaways. I'm hoping that these takeaways will help fill out the target picture that also Colin laid out at the end of his presentation to try to get out of today's event with something actionable for everyone. So thank you very much for the first panel of the day and for the interesting discussion. And yeah, looking forward to one-on-ones during the break. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.